The first thing I noticed was her hand. It rested on my husband's arm like it had every right to be there. Soft pink nails, thin gold bracelet, a diamond-shaped ring that was not an engagement ring, but expensive enough to say somebody had been spending money trying to make her feel chosen. Then I noticed her stomach. Round. Not huge, but undeniable. Pregnant. For one strange second, I just stood there in my own doorway with my work bag still hanging from my shoulder, staring at the two of them as if my brain had decided to delay translation. Because sometimes the truth is so shameless your mind protects you by insisting there must be another version of it. Maybe she was family. Maybe she needed help. Maybe Daniel was about to explain this in some way that did not end with my life splitting open in the foyer. He did not. He leaned against the kitchen counter like this was a mildly inconvenient conversation he had agreed to have out of politeness, slid one hand into his pocket, and said, almost bored, "You're home early. Home early. Not hello. Not we need to talk. Not even guilt. Just that." As if I had interrupted him. As if my timing was rude. The woman beside him gave me a small, careful smile the kind people wear when they know they should not be standing where they are. But they are hoping confidence will do the work morality didn't. She looked maybe 27, pretty in that polished online way. Blonde curls, cream sweater dress, makeup done with expensive restraint. She held a designer diaper bag even though the baby was still inside her. I hated that I noticed all of it. I hated more that I noticed Daniel had dressed better for this conversation than he had for our anniversary dinner 6 months ago. I set my bag down slowly. "Who is this?" My voice came out calm. That surprised me more than it surprised them. Daniel glanced at the woman, then back at me. "This is Ava." I waited. He kept going. "She's pregnant." I looked at him, then at her, then back at him. Still, some stubborn little part of me refused to drag the obvious into daylight, because once a thing is said aloud, it stops being shock and becomes reality. So I made him say it. "And?" He exhaled as if I were dragging out something simple. "And the baby is mine." There it was. A sentence that should have shattered glass. A sentence that should have changed the weather. Instead, the refrigerator hummed. The dishwasher blinked. A car rolled past outside. The world kept moving while mine cracked clean down the middle. I looked at Ava again. She lowered her eyes. Not ashamed enough to leave, though. Daniel pushed off the counter and delivered the part he had clearly rehearsed. "She's moving in." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because pain that's sharp sometimes makes the body choose the wrong door. His expression tightened. "I'm serious. I can see that." Ava shifted awkwardly. "I know this is difficult." I lifted one hand without looking at her. "Please don't." She stopped. Good. Because there are few things more insulting than a side chick trying to sound gentle in another woman's home. Daniel folded his arms. I didn't want to do this in a dramatic way. That made me really look at him. This man had slept beside me for 11 years. I met him when I was 28 and he was 31. We built our life the way most married people do, one compromise at a time. Cheap apartment first, shared car next, long work weeks, burned dinners, credit card debt, tiny vacations we could barely afford, 2 miscarriages only close family knew about, 1 failed IVF round. Years of saying we were fine because the alternative was saying we weren't. And now, here he was. Standing in the kitchen of the house I had spent 7 years paying for, telling me another woman was moving in. Pregnant. Like he was announcing a schedule change. Something cold moved through me then. Not wild. Not loud. Just cold. "What exactly," I asked, "makes you think she's moving into my house?" Daniel gave me a look that used to work on me years ago, back when I still believed marriage meant 2 people moving in the same direction. "Our house." "No," I said. "That's not what I asked." His jaw tightened. Ava looked between us like she had suddenly realized she had walked into something less romantic and more legal. Daniel hated detail when detail did not flatter him. He preferred large, confident statements, final-sounding ones. He liked power when it could be performed in one sentence. I work in contracts. I live in fine print. And even then, even with my heart kicking against my ribs, I noticed the smallest thing. He had not answered the question because he knew the answer, and so did I. Still, he tried. "We're married," he said. "This is our home. I'm not throwing my child away." "And that means what?" His expression shifted. "She'll stay in the guest room." I turned slowly and looked down the hallway. The guest room. The same room I painted myself. The same room my sister stayed in after her divorce. The same room where I once sat on the floor after my second miscarriage because I could not bear lying in the master bedroom beside Daniel while he pretended grief had a schedule. That room, something inside me hardened. No. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "You don't get to say no." "Oh, I absolutely do." Ava stepped in then, and I learned something useful about her. She was one of those women who confuse softness with innocence. "I'm not trying to cause problems," she said quietly. "Daniel said the marriage was basically over." I turned and looked at her properly for the first time. Her cheeks colored beneath my stare. "Did he now?" She swallowed. There it was, that flicker. Not conscience. Just discomfort. The discomfort of a woman realizing she may not be starring in a love story after all. Daniel cut in quickly. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Don't make this uglier than it has to be." I almost admired the nerve. He cheats. He gets another woman pregnant. He brings her into my house. He tells me she's moving in, and I am the one making things ugly. I nodded once. "Okay." Daniel blinked. "Okay?" "Yes, you're right." Both of them stared at me. This was not what they expected. They expected a scene. Throwing things. Tears. Maybe bargaining. Maybe pleading. They expected me broken in front of them. Instead, I walked to the sink, washed my hands carefully, and turned back around. "If she's here," I said, "then I should make dinner." Ava looked startled. Daniel looked suspicious. Good. He should have been. But Daniel had one fatal weakness. He always mistook composure for surrender. He thought calm meant defeated. He thought silence meant harmless. He had forgotten the most important thing about me. I do my best work in silence. "Caroline," he said carefully, "you don't have to do that." I smiled at him. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had just seen the board clearly. "No," I said. "I insist." I moved through the kitchen as if I were underwater. Open fridge. Take out chicken. Set water to boil. Pull vegetables from the drawer. Season. Chop. Stir. Every movement looked normal. Inside, my mind had gone somewhere else entirely. I was remembering the day Daniel talked me into leaving my bigger law firm for an in-house role because he said we needed balance. The year I carried most of our bills when his business idea failed. The way he said we were a team every time he wanted me to absorb a burden. The weekends I spent handling every paper tied to this house because legal forms made his head hurt. The refinance. The deed. The trust. The postnup. The drawer. The papers in my drawer. The thought came so clearly I almost smiled for real. Because once you remember the truth, betrayal changes shape. It stops being a knife. It becomes information. And information can be used. Behind me, I could hear them talking in low voices in the living room. Ava whispering. Daniel answering in that fake, calm tone he used whenever he wanted to sound like the reasonable adult in the room. I caught pieces, taking it better than I thought. I said she'd be upset at first. Give it a few days. A few days. He had already built a timeline for my humiliation. Useful. Very useful. I plated the food carefully. Roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, green beans with black pepper and butter. Daniel's favorite meal. He came back into the kitchen as I set the plates down. You really cooked. I looked up. He looked relieved now, almost smug. There it was, the face of a man who thought he had won. A man who thought his wife had accepted demotion. A man who had no idea his entire little fantasy was standing on rotten wood, and I knew exactly where to step. Yes, I said. Sit down. He hesitated, then called Ava over. She sat carefully, one hand on her stomach, eyes drifting around the room like she was already measuring herself into it. I noticed that too. She looked at the chandelier I picked, the curtains I paid for, the dining chairs I ordered and built because Daniel got too busy, the framed photos on the wall, beaches, weddings, Christmas sweaters, a cabin in Vermont, 11 years of smiling proof that appearances are cheap. Ava's eyes stopped on a photo from 8 years earlier, Daniel and me on the front steps of this house, the day we got the keys. We looked happy. I almost pitied that woman. Almost. I sat across from them and lifted my water glass. Daniel frowned. What are you doing? Having dinner? No. I mean, why are you acting like this? Because I know something you do not. Because the papers in my drawer can gut your entire performance. Because you picked the wrong woman to humiliate. But what I said was, how else should I act? He looked unsettled now. That was better. Daniel could handle noise. He was good with emotional chaos. He knew how to bully his way through a loud argument. Silence was harder for him. Silence made him think. Ava took a small bite. This is really good. I looked at her. She set her fork down. Good. Let her feel watched. Let her feel the truth leaning toward her. Daniel cleared his throat. We should probably talk logistics. That word almost made me smile. Logistics. Like this was a co-parenting calendar. Like this was a housing adjustment. Like he had not just dragged humiliation across my front step. Sure, I said. Let's talk logistics. He leaned back. The best thing is for all of us to stay respectful. No drama, no scenes. We figure out next steps like adults. All of us? Yes, I nodded. Including the woman you cheated with? Ava looked down. Daniel's face hardened. I'm not doing this if you're going to be sarcastic. But you are doing this? I asked, gesturing lightly between them. This part is fine. He dropped his fork with a sharp clatter. There it is, he snapped. There's the attitude. I stared at him for 2 long seconds. Then I said, very quietly, you brought your pregnant mistress into my house and told me she was moving in. Be careful using the word attitude. The room went still. Ava froze. Daniel looked furious, but beneath the fury, I saw something better. Worry. Because for the first time that evening, he remembered something important. I was not stupid, and stupid women are easy to replace. Smart women become dangerous when cornered. He leaned forward. Let's be clear. I'm not leaving my child. I'm not abandoning Ava. So if you think you can force me out, can I? He stopped. A tiny pause. But enough. Then he covered. This is my home too. I tilted my head. Is it? His eyes flashed. Ava looked at him now. That was when I knew she did not know everything. Maybe she thought she was moving into a suburban love story, with a man finally choosing her. Maybe he had told her I was cold, checked out, difficult. Maybe he promised a buyout, a smooth divorce, a clean transition. Men like Daniel always tell lies large enough to live inside. Maybe that was why my anger at her changed shape. Not gone, never gone, just sharpened. Because if she believed him, she was foolish. If she knew the truth and came anyway, she was worse. Either way, she sat at my table eating my food while carrying my husband's child. So no, she was not innocent. Daniel pushed his plate away. I'm tired. We'll talk tomorrow. No. He looked up sharply. No? No, I repeated. Tomorrow suggests negotiation. Tonight works better. His face darkened. You don't control the timing. I folded my napkin, and set it beside my plate. "Daniel," I said, "I think you should go upstairs and pack a bag." For the first time all evening, he looked honestly shocked. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. "Are you serious?" "Very. You've lost your mind." Ava whispered, "Daniel." He ignored her. "You think you can kick me out of my own house? Because you're upset?" I stood slowly. My chair scraped across the hardwood in one long, clean sound. Then I looked him dead in the eye and said the sentence that changed the room. "You need to go pack a bag because the papers in my drawer say this house is not yours." Silence. Pure silence. Daniel's face emptied. Ava's mouth parted. There, the first real crack. I watched his mind move. Fast. Searching. Trying to remember. The deed. The refinance. The trust. The postnuptial agreement he signed without reading because he trusted me to handle boring legal stuff. Color drained from his face. "Caroline," he said slowly. "What papers?" I smiled. This time, it was real. Small. Cold. Certain. "The ones," I said, "you should have paid attention to before bringing her into my house." Ava turned to him, alarmed now. "Daniel?" He stood too quickly and knocked his chair back. "Stop!" he snapped at her, but his eyes never left me. I did not flinch. He took one step toward me. I took one step toward the hallway table, toward the drawer. The whole room came alive. Like the storm had finally arrived after hours of pressure. "Don't!" Daniel said. That one word told me everything. He remembered enough to be afraid. Enough to know I had not accepted anything. Enough to realize my smile during dinner had not been surrender. It had been timing. I placed my fingers lightly on the brass handle and looked back at both of them. At my husband. At the woman carrying his child. At the life they thought they were about to start in my home. Then I said, very softly, "You should both sit down. What happens next is going to be much easier for me than it is for either of you." Fear moved across Daniel's face. Real fear. He stared at the drawer like there was a weapon inside. In a way, there was. Not a gun, not a knife. Paper. Clean, signed, legal paper. The kind of weapon men like Daniel only respect when it is too late. Ava remained seated, but her whole body had gone rigid. One hand rested on the table, the other against her stomach, like she had suddenly felt the floor tilt under her. Daniel took another step. "Open it!" The nerve in his jaw kept jumping. I looked at him, then at the chair he had kicked over. "No," I said calmly. "First, pick up the chair." He blinked. "What?" "You heard me. Caroline, stop playing games." I smiled without warmth. "This is the part where you're confused. You think I'm playing. I'm not. Pick up the chair." For one long second, I thought he might refuse just to prove he still had some control. Then Ava whispered, "Daniel, just do it." He shot her a look sharp enough to draw blood. Useful. He was already beginning to resent her for witnessing this. Men like Daniel can survive many things. Humiliation is not one of them. Slowly, still watching me, he bent down and set the chair back in place. "Good," I said. I opened the drawer. Inside sat several folders, neatly arranged. Blue, grey, black. Daniel's eyes locked instantly on the black one. Of course they did. That was the folder he remembered. Or half remembered. Because years ago, when his spending got slippery and his lies started arriving in small polished pieces, I made a decision. I did not announce it. I did not threaten him. I protected myself. Quietly, I reviewed everything. Bank statements, property papers, refinance documents, insurance files, beneficiary designations, business exposure, every signature, every clause. And while Daniel stayed busy talking too much and reading too little, I made sure that if the day ever came when he tried to turn my own life against me, he would regret it. That day had come. I pulled out the black folder and laid it on the table. Ava looked from it to Daniel. He did not sit. He stood rigid, breathing through his nose, like a man trying not to panic by pretending he is still angry. "What is that?" Ava asked softly. Daniel answered before I could. "It's paperwork." That almost made me laugh. Just paperwork? Yes. That was exactly how men dismiss the things that eventually bury them. I sat back down and opened the folder with deliberate care. Inside was a stack of documents, separated by labeled tabs. Property, trust, postnuptial, business liability, beneficiary updates. Every tab had a purpose. Every page had consequences. Daniel looked at the labels, and I watched the blood leave his face, one measured inch at a time. "Sit down," I said. He didn't move. I looked at Ava. "You too." She remained where she was. Daniel stood another beat, then finally sat across from me, shoulders tight, hands flat against the table. No swagger, no boredom, no king of the house. Good. I turned the first document toward them. "This," I said, tapping the page, "is the updated deed from the refinance 4 years ago." Ava leaned in automatically. Daniel did not. He was trying to remember before he read. I remembered that afternoon perfectly. He was half-dressed for a golf weekend, rushing me through the papers because he was late meeting friends. He kissed my forehead, signed where I pointed, and joked, "This is why I married a contracts nerd. You handle the boring stuff." I had smiled then too. Funny how many meanings a smile can carry. I tapped the line again. "Read the names." Ava read first. Out loud. Caroline Hayes, sole title holder. The room died. Daniel's head snapped toward the paper, then toward me, then back again. "That's not possible," he said. "It is." "No." "Yes. That's not what we agreed." I leaned back. "That is exactly what you agreed to." He grabbed the page and scanned it fast, too fast to understand properly. Ava looked at him. "Daniel?" He ignored her. His breathing had gone shallow. He flipped to the signature page. There it was. His signature. Clear. Plain. Unarguable. He stared at it for a long time. "Why would I sign this?" he muttered. I answered anyway. "Because your business debts were growing, and you were scared a creditor could come after shared assets. I told you moving title into my name would protect the house from your exposure." His eyes lifted to mine. "Recognition. Memory. Enough of it, anyway." I continued. "You said, and I quote, 'Fine, whatever keeps the wolves away.'" Ava's face changed. Just slightly, but I saw it. She was beginning to understand she was not standing beside a powerful man bringing her into his home. She was standing beside a reckless man who did not know what he had signed. Daniel slammed the page back down. That was for liability purposes. "Yes, that doesn't mean—" "It means," I said, cutting cleanly across him, "that legally the home is mine." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "You're my wife." I gave him a flat look. "For now." Ava inhaled sharply. "Good. Let that settle." Daniel turned to her quickly. "Don't react to everything she says." I watched that. The command in his voice, the irritation in hers. Their fantasy was already cracking under ordinary pressure. They had not even lasted 1 honest hour. I slid the next paper forward. "This is the postnuptial agreement." Daniel swore under his breath. Ava stared at him. "There's a postnuptial agreement?" He still didn't answer, which was answer enough. I opened to the relevant page and turned it so both of them could see. This section covers marital misconduct affecting asset division. Ava winced still. Daniel's face had turned a pale, ugly grey. I kept going. Infidelity. Concealment of major financial acts. Misuse of marital funds. Conduct causing financial or reputational harm to the other spouse. "Stop talking like you're in court," Daniel snapped. I looked at him calmly. "You should have started reading like you were in one." Ava lowered her eyes. A tiny movement, but telling. because now she understood something ugly. Daniel had not told her the facts. Maybe he painted me as cold, maybe controlling, maybe emotionally absent, maybe just the legal wife lingering while he built a future elsewhere. But he had not told her he had tied himself into documents he never bothered to understand. And women who agree to be side chicks usually expect drama. They do not expect enforceable clauses. I tapped the paragraph with one fingernail. In the event of proven adultery by either party, the non-offending spouse retains primary claim over the marital residence, if titled in that spouse's name, along with financial protections detailed in Exhibit C. Ava looked up. What is Exhibit C? I turned the page. Daniel closed his eyes for one brief second. He knew enough. Exhibit C, I said, details reimbursement rights and access to certain investment accounts funded disproportionately by the non-offending spouse. Ava's mouth parted. Daniel stood so fast his chair scraped back again. No. I did not move. Yes. No. Absolutely not. I folded my hands. This is the part where you start understanding why bringing your pregnant mistress into my dining room was a tactical error. Caroline. No, I said. You've said my name enough tonight. Sit down. He did not. Instead, he started pacing, one hand over his mouth. Ava watched him with growing panic. You told me, she said carefully, that the divorce would be simple. He turned on her instantly. Not now, Ava. No, I said. Now is exactly the right time. He glared at me. I didn't care. Ava's voice got smaller. You said the house was half yours. Daniel snapped. It should be. There it was. Not it is. Not legally. Not by agreement. Just, it should be. The language of entitled men everywhere. I looked at Ava and said softly, Would you like the short version? She stared at me. Daniel barked, Do not involve her. I ignored him. The short version is this. The house is legally mine. The agreement he signed puts him in a very weak position if adultery is proven. And if you move into this property tonight, you are not moving into his home. You are trespassing in mine. That word landed. Trespassing. Ava looked at Daniel so fast it was painful. You said, I know what I said, he snapped. No, she said, voice shaking now. Apparently you don't. Good. Very good. That was the shift I wanted. The moment she stopped seeing me as the obstacle and started seeing him as the liar, Daniel ran both hands through his hair. This doesn't change anything. I gave him a long look. That's not true. It changes almost everything. He laughed bitterly. You think because your name is on some papers, you win? I tilted my head. No, I think because my name is on all the right papers, you lose. The silence after that was exquisite. Not because I enjoy suffering, because balance matters. Daniel finally sat down again, slower this time, like his legs no longer fully trusted him. He looked older suddenly, smaller too, not physically, energetically. Power leaves people before they know it is gone. What do you want? He asked. That was the first honest question he had asked all night. So I answered honestly. Tonight, I want the truth to sit in this room without your performance covering it. He stared at me. I continued. You didn't come home to confess. You didn't apologize. You didn't ask for a divorce like a man with basic decency. You brought a pregnant woman into my house and announced she was moving in. That was not honesty. That was humiliation. You wanted to break me before logistics even began. Ava looked at him again. This time there was no softness in her face, only calculation. Interesting. Maybe she wasn't as helpless as she looked. Daniel rubbed his forehead. I didn't want to fight. That's funny, I said. Because you brought one home gift-wrapped. He said nothing. I turned to Ava. And you? She stiffened. You should hear this clearly, because this is the kindest I'm going to be. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. You are pregnant, And whatever I think of your choices, I am not going to scream at a pregnant woman in my dining room. But do not confuse restraint with weakness. You walked into another woman's house with her husband and expected to settle in. That is not love. That is arrogance dressed as hope. Ava flinched like I had slapped her. Daniel slammed his palm against the table. Enough. I didn't even blink. No, not nearly. He stood again. I remained seated. That difference mattered. He looked out of control. I looked anchored. Optics matter in a confrontation. The calmer person usually looks more believable, more dangerous too. I'm still entitled to equity, he said. There it was. The new angle. Dominance gone. Negotiation beginning. Good. That meant he knew the throne was gone. You can discuss whatever your attorney thinks you're entitled to, I said, from somewhere else. His nostrils flared. I'm not leaving tonight. I reached into the folder and pulled out one more sheet. Not court-issued. Not dramatic. Just practical. A written demand form I prepared months earlier after the first moment I suspected he was cheating. Not filed. Not served. Just ready. Because unlike Daniel, I believe in preparation before impact. I placed it in front of him. What is this? A written demand that you vacate the property immediately, pending formal legal notice. Ava whispered, "Oh my God." Daniel looked at her like he wanted silence. Then he looked at me, and finally, I saw it clearly. He had thought I would drown in emotion. He had never once planned for competence. I'm your husband, he said through clenched teeth. And yet, I said, here we are. His eyes narrowed. You would put me out tonight? I let the question sit. Then I said, you brought your pregnant side chick into my house tonight. His face twisted. Yes, that was the center of it. No decoration needed. Ava pushed her chair back a few inches. I looked at her. She swallowed. I think maybe I should go. Daniel turned sharply. No. Interesting. Because now he needed her, not only emotionally, but strategically. If she left, he would stand alone in the wreckage of his own choices. Ava looked at him with open doubt. You said you had handled everything. That sentence cut him deeper than anything I had said. I saw it land. The trouble with liars is that they borrow confidence from other people's belief. Once that belief starts to leave, so do they. I did handle it, he said, but even he no longer sounded convinced. No, I said quietly. You didn't. I stood and gathered the papers into a neat stack. Daniel watched every movement. Ava did too. The next part is simple, I said. Ava leaves. Tonight. You pack a bag. Tonight. Tomorrow morning my attorney receives a call. By tomorrow afternoon, this becomes very official. Daniel's whole body tensed. You already talked to a lawyer? I gave him a flat look. I am a lawyer, Daniel. But yes. I also spoke to one. That finished something in him. Not all at once, but enough. He sank back into the chair and stared at the table. Ava stood slowly, one hand gripping the chair. I need air, she whispered. Daniel looked up. Ava. She didn't answer. Her eyes found mine instead. There was shame there now, and anger. Not at me. At him. Good. She picked up her bag. Daniel stood halfway, torn between following her and staying to fight me. He chose what weak men choose first. Damage control. Ava, wait outside. I'll handle this. She laughed once. Small. Bitter. Finished. Handle this? She said. That's exactly what you said before we came here. Then she walked out. The front door opened. Closed. And suddenly it was just me and my husband in the house that was never truly his. For the first time that night, the silence felt different. Not tense. Empty. After a few seconds, Daniel said, You embarrassed me in front of her. I stared at him. Actually stared. Because some statements deserve witness. Then I said, You brought your mistress home to replace me over dinner, and your concern is embarrassment. He looked away, and there it was at last. Not apology, he was too vain for that, but the first flicker of understanding that he had stepped into something bigger than a domestic fight. He was now in terrain I understood better than he ever would, and he knew it. I made a mistake, he muttered. I laughed once, dry and sharp. No, Daniel, cheating was not a mistake. Getting her pregnant was not a mistake. Bringing her here was not a mistake. Those were choices. The mistake was assuming I had not prepared for your choices. He sat in silence. I looked toward the stairs. Go pack. He didn't move. I'm serious. So am I. He rubbed his face hard. Where am I supposed to go? I gave him the answer he deserved. That sounds like something you should have thought about before inviting a second household into mine. He looked at me with disbelief, maybe because some part of him still expected the old Caroline, the patient one, the one who explained things gently, the one who absorbed damage and organized cleanup. She was gone. He stood slowly. I need a few days. No, at least until I figure out. No. His voice rose. You can't throw me out like garbage. That made me smile. Because at last, finally, he had arrived at the emotion I had been waiting for. Not rage. Not superiority. Fear of being discarded. Interesting how unbearable that feels when it comes back around. You should have thought about that, I said softly, before deciding I was replaceable. He stared at me for one long second. Then he turned and went upstairs. Heavy steps, closet doors, a suitcase dragged out. I stayed at the table and put every paper back into place. Neat, clean, controlled. Because revenge is not always screaming. Sometimes it is paperwork filed on time, a home protected, a man packing a bag in a house he no longer controls. 10 minutes later, Daniel came back down with a duffel bag. Not enough for a future, just enough for survival. His eyes looked wild now, less polished, more human. It made him uglier. He stopped near the front door. This isn't over, he said. I almost pitied him for reaching for such a tired line. Almost. No, I said. It's not. It's just no longer yours. He put his hand on the knob, then paused. When he spoke again, his voice was lower. Did you know? Know what? That I was cheating. I looked at him. Straight. Steady. I knew enough. His shoulders dropped a fraction. He nodded once, like a man receiving a sentence he had earned, but still hated. Then he left. The door shut behind him. And just like that, the house went quiet. Really quiet. No perfume. No performance. No tension vibrating through the walls. Just me. I stood in the center of my dining room and let the silence settle into me. Then I sat down, because the truth is, victory rarely arrives as triumph. Sometimes it arrives as exhaustion. Sometimes it arrives as shaking hands under the table. Sometimes it arrives as the plate where your husband ate dinner 10 minutes before you threw him out. I looked toward the front window and saw headlights outside. Daniel's car, still there, and just beyond it, another figure. Ava. She stood near the curb in her cream sweater, one hand on her stomach, the other pressed to her face, crying. Daniel was talking to her fast, defensive, animated. Even from inside, I could tell he was lying again, explaining, spinning, trying to save something already dead. But some things do not recover from exposure, especially not in front of the person you were trying hardest to impress. I watched them for one more second. Then I stood and closed the curtains. Not out of pain, out of closure. I went back to the hallway table, opened the drawer again, and pulled out one final envelope from the back. White, sealed, unmarked. Inside was something Daniel had never bothered to ask about. Not the house papers, not the postnup, not the asset clauses. Something else, something worse. Because months earlier, when I first started preparing, I had not only protected the house, I had followed the money. And what I found there was uglier than the affair. I turned the envelope over in my hand and looked toward the dark front door. Then I whispered to the empty room, "You should have just asked for a divorce." Inside that envelope were transfer records, statements, and one signature trail that could destroy far more than his marriage. And by morning, Daniel was going to learn that losing the house was only the beginning. I did not sleep that night. Not really. I changed into an old t-shirt, washed the dishes one by one, wiped down the counters, locked every door, checked every window, like I was closing a building after a fire. My body kept moving. My mind stayed fixed on the envelope. It sat on the kitchen island while the clock crept past midnight. White, plain, heavy. Some truths change shape depending on when you open them. At 6 in the evening, they are suspicion. At midnight, they become evidence. By morning, strategy. I made tea I did not drink. Then I took the envelope into my office, sat at my desk, and opened it again. Even though I already knew every page inside. Statements, transfers, copies of checks, screenshots, a timeline, months of quiet theft, hidden inside ordinary life. This was not the part of the story anyone would guess from the outside. If you looked at Daniel from a distance, he still knew how to appear respectable. Nice haircut, good shoes, firm handshake, expensive cologne, the right smile at the right time. Image is cheap, paper is honest. And paper had told me a very different story. The first sign came 5 months earlier. I was reviewing tax documents because our accountant kept sending reminders Daniel had ignored. That part was normal. Daniel forgot anything that bored him and remembered only what benefited him. He used to joke that I was the engine of the marriage because I handled everything important. At the time, I laughed. Later, I realized that was exactly how he wanted it. Not because he respected me. Because if I stayed busy keeping the machine running, I had less time to notice he kept disappearing from it. That afternoon, I saw a transfer I did not recognize. It was not huge, not dramatic, just small enough to slip past a distracted spouse. $2,000 moved from a joint account into a personal account Daniel used years earlier for what he called business testing. I nearly ignored it. Nearly. But the date bothered me. It landed on the same weekend Daniel had claimed he was at a conference in Chicago. A conference, I later learned, had never existed. So I checked the month before. Another transfer. Then the month before that. Then another. Same pattern. Different amounts. Always modest enough to stay quiet if no one was paying attention. That was when my stomach went cold. Because cheating is one betrayal. Financial betrayal is another. And when they happen together, the affair is not just weakness. It is infrastructure. I spread the pages across my desk and stared at them in the dark. The ugly thing about uncovering a lie is how fast the past rearranges around it. Every late dinner becomes suspicious. Every work trip grows missing teeth. Every unexplained expense turns into a breadcrumb. Every tired excuse starts belonging to a system. And Daniel had built a system. Sloppy, yes, but still a system. I remember the first night I followed it all the way through. 1 in the morning, rain at the windows, house dark. Me in this same chair with a yellow legal pad, tracing money like blood across tile. Money out of our joint account. Money out of the emergency fund. Money moved under line items he thought I never checked. Money labeled consulting. Money labeled vendor advance. Money transferred twice, then withdrawn in cash. Every path led somewhere. Eventually, every path led to her, Ava. At first, only indirectly. A rent payment on an apartment across town. A furniture charge delivered to a building Daniel had no reason to visit. Prenatal clinic payments. A boutique baby store. Luxury grocery delivery to a zip code that was not ours. The affair was not just emotional, not just physical. He had been building another life with money he had no right to use. Our money. My money too. That was the part that killed the last softness in me. If Daniel had come to me months earlier and said, "I'm unhappy, I want out," I would have hated him, but at least I would have known the man I married still had a spine somewhere under the polish. But this was cowardice with spreadsheets. This was theft dressed as confusion. This was a man using my labor to finance the woman he planned to replace me with. I leaned back in my chair and pressed my fingers to my eyes. The grief came in strange waves. Not tears, not yet. Just pressure. The kind that makes your chest feel too tight and your skin too thin. I looked around my office at the life I built piece by piece. The framed degree, the shelves, the filing cabinet, the lamp in the corner, the blanket over the reading chair. Every object in that room had a story. Every story had my fingerprints on it. Daniel liked to act as though he was the center of our marriage. He wasn't. He was just the loudest part. That is not the same thing. I picked up one statement and studied a line I knew by heart. Transfer from the joint account into the side account. Same day, a payment from that account to an apartment management company. 3 days later, a furniture store charge. 1 week later, a prenatal bill. He had not only cheated, he had financed nesting. He had taken pieces of our marriage and used them to decorate another woman's life. By 2 a.m, my tea was cold and untouched. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Daniel. 2 texts. "We need to talk. Don't do anything crazy before we talk in the morning." I stared at the second one for a long moment. Then I laughed. Quietly. Bitterly. Men like Daniel always call women emotional after creating conditions no sane person could absorb. They start the fire and ask you not to overreact to the smoke. I did not answer. Instead, I opened an email draft I had prepared weeks earlier. Subject line: urgent, file preparation and financial tracing. It was addressed to Andrea Cole, the attorney I consulted after I found the third suspicious transfer. Andrea was exactly the kind of lawyer people like Daniel underestimate. Soft voice, perfect posture, no wasted words, no visible ego. The kind of woman men call pleasant right before she removes their defense, one clause at a time. I had not formally retained her then. I had consulted, documented, prepared, because once suspicion enters your home, you do not move too fast. You gather, you verify, you wait until the strike can be clean. My cursor blinked over the draft. I added one line. He brought the pregnant affair partner into the house tonight and announced she was moving in. Proceed. Then I hit send. The sound of that email leaving my outbox was tiny, almost ridiculous, but it felt like a lock turning somewhere deep inside me. I checked the time. 2:17 a.m. Then I gathered every statement back into the envelope except one page I set aside. A single page showing a transfer trail into a payment marked for a lease application. The date at the top looked like an insult. 3 weeks before Daniel took me to dinner for our anniversary and toasted new beginnings. I remember that dinner clearly now. He booked too late, so we got a mediocre table near the service station. He checked his phone twice. He complimented my dress without really looking. He raised his glass and said, "To us. We've survived a lot." I smiled because I still wanted survival to mean something noble. Now I understood what he really meant. He had survived my trust long enough to build his exit. A sound outside my office door made me freeze. For one wild second, my body reacted as if Daniel had come back inside. But it was only the heater kicking on. The sound left me both foolish and furious. That is what betrayal steals first. Before the divorce, before the legal fight, before the public embarrassment, safety goes first. I stood, crossed the room, checked the security panel again. Armed. Good. Then my phone buzzed. A new message. From Ava. "I got your number from Daniel's phone. I think we need to talk. Woman to woman." I read it once. Then again. Woman to woman. There it was again, that strange language women reach for when they want mercy from the wife after helping ruin the wife's life. I did not answer immediately. Instead, I sat back down and thought, emotion tells you to block. Strategy tells you to pause. So I typed one line. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. coffee shop on Birch and 8th. Come alone. She replied almost immediately. Okay. I set the phone down. That told me two things. First, whatever happened between them outside my house had gone badly. Second, Ava now knew Daniel had lied more deeply than she understood at dinner. Interesting. Maybe she wanted answers. Maybe leverage. Maybe protection. Maybe absolution. She was not getting the last one from me. But the rest? Possibly. I finally lay down around 3, still in my clothes, and closed my eyes. Sleep came in broken pieces. Daniel's face, the front door, the cream sweater, the black folder, the transfer trail, a baby store receipt. His voice saying, "She's moving in." At 6:30, I was awake again. I showered, dressed in a navy blouse and charcoal slacks, and tied my hair back cleanly. I did not want to look fragile. I did not want to look glamorous. This was not theatre. This was evidence day. My phone had more messages now. 5 from Daniel. Answer me. This can still be handled privately. Do not bring lawyers into this until we talk. Ava is upset. You're making this worse. That last text made me stop at the kitchen counter and smile at nothing. You're making this worse. Remarkable. I had not cheated. I had not stolen. I had not brought a stranger into the house. I had not built a second life using shared funds. But somehow I was the escalation, the eternal male fantasy, that consequences arrive out of nowhere. I made coffee and finally replied, "Be clear about one thing. You made this worse. I am simply making it expensive." He did not answer. I appreciated that. At 8:15, Andrea called. I put her on speaker while I packed my bag. "I saw your email," she said. "I assume the situation has accelerated. That's one word for it. Do you want the professional version or the honest version?" I smiled despite myself. Both. The professional version is that his conduct strengthens your position. The honest version is that bringing the affair partner into the residence was catastrophically stupid. Agreed. Do you have proof of the financial diversion ready? Yes. Good. Do not hand originals to anyone. Do not argue by phone. And if the affair partner reaches out, she already did. Andrea paused. Interesting. She may know more than he realizes. I'm meeting her at 10. Another pause. That could be useful or messy. Yes. Record notes immediately after. No guessing. Facts only. I know. I assumed you did, she said. I'll have preliminary filings drafted by noon. That sentence steadied me more than coffee. Some people think revenge is emotion. It isn't. The effective kind is structure, deadlines, paper trails, witnesses, timing. I hung up and looked around the kitchen. For a brief second, grief hit me again that this had once been an ordinary morning house. Grocery lists, laundry baskets, shared calendars, Sunday pancakes. The pain rose hot and sudden. Not for Daniel. For me. For the version of me who invested years into a marriage while the man beside her quietly hollowed it out. I let that feeling sit for exactly 10 seconds. Then I picked up my bag and left. The coffee shop on Birch and 8th was one of those clean little places with too many plants and soft music just loud enough to make private conversations feel safer than they are. I arrived first. Of course. I took a table near the window with a clean view of the door and ordered black coffee. At 10:03, Ava came in. No cream sweater this time. No polished curls. No soft, glowing fantasy. She wore leggings, an oversized coat, and sunglasses, even though the sky was grey. When she took them off, I saw she had barely slept. Her eyes were swollen. Good. Not because I enjoyed her suffering, because reality had finally reached her. She approached slowly, gripping her bag with both hands. "Hi," she said. I did not stand. "Sit." She sat. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then Ava looked down and said, "He told me the marriage had been over for a long time." I folded my hands around my cup. "I assumed he told you that." Her lips trembled. "He said you were basically roommates." "That's convenient." She swallowed. "He said you didn't love him anymore." That one landed, but I didn't show it. "Did he tell you he was using marital funds to support your apartment?" Her eyes widened instantly. No. There it was. Raw. Immediate. Real. "Did he tell you the house was not legally his?" No. "Did he tell you he signed a postnuptial agreement that puts him in a terrible position if adultery is proven?" No. Her voice got smaller with every answer. I studied her. She was not blameless, but she was also not fully informed. That mattered. Not morally. Strategically. She looked up. "What exactly did he do?" I took a copied statement page from my bag and slid it across the table. "Start there." She read in silence. Halfway down, her expression cracked. Not into tears, into recognition. "What?" I asked. She looked up slowly. He told me he was covering everything himself." I said nothing. She kept staring at the page. "He said he was helping me because he wanted to make things right before the baby came." My voice stayed calm. "With whose money?" She looked sick. Exactly. Now she understood. This was not a man choosing her with courage. This was a man funding her with theft. Ava leaned back and pressed a hand to her stomach. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I believed that part, not because I trusted her, because shame has a texture and hers looked real." "What do you want from me?" I asked. That surprised her. "What?" "You reached out. So tell me plainly, what do you want?" Ava looked down at the table for a long time. Then she said, "I think there's more." My whole body sharpened. "What do you mean?" She glanced around the room, then lowered her voice. "I don't think I'm the only one." For the first time since she sat down, something like shock moved through me. Not because it was impossible, because it fit too well. Daniel's schedule, his spending, his evasiveness, the gaps. I kept my face still. "Explain." Ava twisted the strap of her bag. "A few months ago, I saw messages on his phone from another woman. He said she was a client. Then he changed his passcode." I stared at her. She rushed on. "I didn't push it because I was already pregnant and he kept saying everything would settle once he left you." There it was. The full selfishness of it. Daniel had not been building a love story. He had been juggling women and timelines, believing charm would buy him one more week each time. "What woman?" I asked. "I don't know." The name in the phone was Lena HVAC. I almost laughed from the absurdity. Not because it was funny. Because cheaters are often embarrassingly unoriginal. Ava kept going now, the dam clearly broken. "He also had a storage unit." That made me still. "What?" She nodded quickly. "I went with him once. He said he needed business inventory, but it wasn't business stuff. It looked like furniture, boxes, electronics, unopened kitchen stuff, like somebody was building an apartment in pieces." My mind moved fast. Lease, furniture, baby purchases, storage unit. He had built layers, backups, hidden compartments. Maybe for Ava. Maybe not only for Ava. "When did you go there?" I asked. "About 6 weeks ago." "Do you know where it is?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. Good?" "Very good." I leaned in slightly. "Write the address down." She stared at me. For 1 second, I saw her understand the shift. We were not friends, not allies, but our interests overlapped. Daniel had lied to both of us, used both of us, managed both of us. And people like him deserve discovery more than loyalty. Ava pulled out a receipt, borrowed a pen from the sugar station, and wrote an address on the back with a shaky hand. I took it, folded it once, put it in my bag, Then I asked the question that mattered most. Does he know you're here? She hesitated. Too long. I set my cup down. He knows, doesn't he? Her eyes filled instantly. He guessed I might contact you. Did you tell him where? No. That I believed. But the damage was done. Daniel now knew there was a line between us he could no longer fully control. Good. Listen to me carefully, I said. Whatever fantasy he sold you is over. He is not in control of this anymore. If you are smart, you will stop letting him narrate reality to you. Ava looked like she wanted to cry again, but was too ashamed. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. That sentence almost offended me with its weakness. I held her gaze. You may not have planned this ending, but you absolutely participated in the beginning. She flinched. I did not soften it. Sometimes truth is the only respectful thing left. She nodded once. Small. Broken. I know. For a moment, we sat in silence. Two women tied together by one dishonest man, one unborn child, and a table full of damage. Then Ava reached into her bag again. There's one more thing. She slid her phone across to me. On the screen was a photo. Not of Daniel. Not of her. A document. A lease application. Partially visible, but enough. My eyes went to the income section. Then the guarantor section. Then the signature. My pulse changed, because the signature there was not Daniel's. It was mine, or rather, a clumsy imitation of mine. I looked up slowly. Where did you get this? He emailed it to me, Ava whispered. He said not to worry about the application because everything had already been approved. My voice went very quiet. He forged my signature. Ava nodded. That was the moment the room changed. Not emotionally, legally. Cheating hurts. Stealing enrages. Humiliation hardens. Forgery escalates. Forgery belongs to a different universe. I stared at the fake signature until my vision narrowed. Then I took a picture of the screen with my phone and handed hers back. Forward that email to me. Right now. She did. My phone buzzed 3 seconds later. I checked the attachment. Sender line. Timestamp. Perfect. Or terrible for him. Perfect for me. Ava looked at me as if she were waiting for judgment, or mercy, or instruction. What she got was honesty. You need your own lawyer, I said. Her eyes widened. I can't afford. You should have thought about that before trusting a man who funds apartments with stolen money and forges signatures. She looked down. I let a second pass, then added, but you still need one. She nodded. Good. I stood, gathered my bag, and left cash on the table. Ava looked up. That's it? I gave her one last look. No, I said. That's just the part you got to see. Then I walked out into the cold morning air. My phone buzzed before I reached my car. Daniel. Calling. Of course. I let it ring. Then ring again. Then stop. A second later, a text came through. Where are you? We need to resolve this now. I looked at the message, then at the folded receipt in my bag with the storage address, then at the forwarded email containing the forged signature. He still thought this was a marriage problem. Still thought this was a conversation. Still thought this was salvageable. He had no idea that by noon, the affair would no longer be the most dangerous thing about him. I got into my car and called Andrea. She answered on the first ring. Tell me you've got something useful. I started the engine. I've got theft, a hidden storage unit, and what looks a lot like forgery. Andrea was silent for half a beat. Then she said the most beautiful sentence I had heard all week. Well, that changes everything. There is a certain kind of fear that no longer feels like fear once you get angry enough. It becomes focus. That was what I felt as I drove across town with the address from Ava in my bag and Andrea's words still moving through me. That changes everything. Yes, it did. Until that morning, Daniel was a cheating husband with a secret second life and bad judgment. Ugly, cruel, humiliating, but still within the familiar world of betrayal. Forgery moved him outside that world. Forgery meant planning. Intent, a willingness to use my name as a tool. That was not infidelity. That was trespass, and the more I replayed it, the colder I became. The storage facility sat in a dull industrial strip 20 minutes away, wedged between an autoglass shop and a warehouse supplier. It looked exactly like the kind of place people choose when they do not want anything in their life to attract attention. Flat grey building, roll-up doors, fence with keypad access, a security camera over the front office. No charm, no story, just space for secrets. I parked across the lot and watched for a few seconds. A delivery truck pulled out. A man in work boots wheeled a dolly past a row of units. Nobody looked at me. Good. I called Andrea first. She picked up immediately. Tell me you didn't go in already. I'm in the parking lot. Better. Listen carefully. If you have lawful access, document what you see. If you do not force entry. Do not bluff your way into a criminal problem. And do not touch anything you cannot explain later. I know. You sound calm. I'm furious. Good, she said. That usually makes you efficient. I smiled despite myself. Send me everything you find, she said. And if the signature is forged, forward me the original email header from her message too. We may need timing. Already done. Of course you did. I hung up and checked my phone again. 3 more texts from Daniel. Answer me. You are making legal threats over a private issue. Do not go digging where you don't understand the full context. That third one made me laugh out loud. Because men like Daniel always expose themselves under pressure. The wording was wrong. Too careful. Too fast. Too defensive. He knew I had found something. Maybe not what, but something. There was, apparently, something to dig into. I stepped out of the car, straightened my coat, and walked into the office. Behind the counter sat a bored woman in red glasses with a crossword book beside the keyboard. She looked up with the exact expression of someone who had already dealt with enough nonsense and wanted very badly not to add mine. Can I help you? I gave her my professional smile. I hope so. I'm trying to verify whether a unit linked to a household financial dispute is connected to documents signed without my authorization. She blinked. I translated. My husband rented a storage unit. He may have used my name on paperwork without permission. That, she understood. Her posture changed. Do you know the unit number? No. I have the facility address and likely the account name. She frowned. We can't just give out customer details. I understand, I said. But if my name appears on any document here, you may currently be holding records tied to fraud. I'm not asking for gossip. I'm asking whether Caroline Hayes appears anywhere on an account opened by Daniel Hayes. She stared at me. I let the silence do the work. Administrative people do not want drama. They want clarity. And above all, they do not want to become part of something bigger later. What's your name? She asked. Caroline Hayes. And his? Daniel Hayes. She typed for a moment. Then her face changed. Very slightly. Very usefully. What? I asked. She turned the screen a fraction away from me automatically, but too late. I had seen enough. Your name is listed on an alternate access authorization, she said carefully. There it was. I kept my face neutral. Was that authorization signed? Another pause. Yes. Can I see it? She hesitated. I need to call the manager. Please do. She disappeared through a back door. I stood there, with my hands loosely clasped, the picture of patience, while everything inside me sharpened. Alternate access authorization. Of course. Daniel had not just rented a hidden unit. He had layered my name into the paperwork. Probably to make the account look stronger, cleaner, more legitimate. Maybe he assumed married names blur together. Maybe he believed nobody reads carefully. Maybe he never imagined I would walk in myself. That was his weakness every time. He built lies around the idea that I would stay where he last placed me. Wife at home, wife in the dark, wife doing paperwork without asking why. He never updated the model. The manager came out 2 minutes later, tall, guarded. The kind of man who had spent years learning how not to say anything unnecessary. "I'm Mark," he said. I introduced myself and repeated the short version. He listened without interruption. Then he said, "We take unauthorized use of identity seriously. If your name appears on the access form, I can show you that document. I cannot open a unit without confirming rights. That's fair." He stepped behind the desk, clicked through something, and printed 1 page. When he laid it on the counter, my pulse barely changed. I was too angry for surprise. It was my name, my address, a close imitation of my signature. Not perfect. Not good enough to fool me for 2 seconds, but good enough to fool anyone who only glances. The date on the form was 7 weeks old. Right around the same time, Daniel became weirdly protective of his briefcase and started taking calls outside. I looked up. "This is forged." Mark nodded once. "That appears likely." "Yes," I said. "It does." The woman with the red glasses stopped pretending not to listen. I took out my phone and photographed the page. Then I emailed it directly to Andrea. Then I photographed it again from a second angle in case the first image was bad. Documentation first. Emotion later. Mark folded his arms. "If you want, I can flag the account for management review. We may also suspend access temporarily pending identity clarification." Now that was interesting. A suspension would protect whatever was inside. It would also tell Daniel something had gone wrong. Would that be bad? Possibly. Would it be useful? More than possibly. "Do it," I said. He nodded. "I'll note suspected unauthorized authorization and hold access pending review. Thank you." Then I added, very politely, "I would also like copies of any paperwork bearing my name, along with the date the account was opened." Mark gave me the look people give when they realize they are not speaking to someone who can be brushed aside. "I can provide a limited packet for identity-related dispute purposes." "Perfect." He went back to the printer. While I waited, my phone buzzed again. Daniel. Calling. I rejected it. A text followed immediately. "Where are you right now?" No greeting. No pretense. Just control. Which meant he felt it slipping. I did not answer. Mark handed me a small, stapled packet. Rental start date. Account holder, Daniel Hayes. Alternate, authorized individual, Caroline Hayes. Copy of the forged access form. Partial payment history. That last page caught my eye instantly. Because the payment card on file ended in the same last 4 digits as the household card Daniel had claimed was lost 3 months earlier, I stared at the numbers, then looked up slowly. "Can I photograph this too?" "Yes." I did. Joint card. Storage account. Forged authorization. 1 more knot tightening. I thanked them and stepped back outside into the lot. I could have left right there and still had enough to make his life very unpleasant. But then something happened that changed the day. A black SUV turned into the lot. Daniel's black SUV. For a split second, I thought stress had inserted him there. Then the driver's door opened, and Daniel stepped out. He froze when he saw me. Actually froze. One hand still on the door, face drained. Eyes flicking from me to the office, and back again. There are very few moments in life where another person's panic is so clean, so deserved, that witnessing it feels medicinal. This was one of them. I said nothing. Neither did he. The entire lot seemed to pause. Then he shut the door harder than necessary and walked toward me. Fast. Too fast. "Why are you here?" His voice was low, but the panic under it was loud. I lifted the stapled packet between 2 fingers. "I could ask you the same." His eyes dropped to the papers. That was the second fear, became certainty. He knew enough. Not everything, but enough. "Give me that," he said. I almost smiled. No. He came closer. Caroline, not here. Interesting. You had no problem bringing things to my house. He looked toward the office. Did you talk to them? Yes. His jaw tightened so hard I thought I might hear it crack. You had no right. I laughed once, soft and sharp. That is an extremely funny thing to say while standing in front of forged paperwork with my name on it. For the first time, real alarm flashed across his face. Not vague anxiety. The bright, ugly alarm of a man realizing language had turned against him. He lowered his voice. Keep your voice down. No. Caroline. No. You do not get to lower my volume after what you did. A worker pushing a cart glanced over. Good. Let him feel visible. Daniel took another step. You don't understand what this is. I looked at the packet. A storage account you rented using a household card while forging my authorization? That's not what happened. Then explain. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing. Good. Truth had finally become harder than lying. I folded the packet once and slipped it into my bag. He saw that and reached toward the strap instinctively. Big mistake. I stepped back immediately. Do not touch me. He dropped his hand and glanced around, suddenly aware of cameras, witnesses, optics. Excellent. That awareness had arrived late. But it had arrived. I'm trying to talk to you, he said, forcing calm into his voice. No. You are trying to get in front of whatever you think I know. His nostrils flared. You're acting insane! There it was. When men cannot regain control, they start trying to discredit the woman describing what they did. I tilted my head. And you're acting sloppy. That hit him. I saw it in the twitch near his left eye. Sloppy. Not evil. Not monstrous. Sloppy. Because men like Daniel are vain about competence. Accuse them of malice and they get defensive. Accuse them of carelessness and they feel insulted at the bone. He glanced past me toward the row of units, then back to my bag, then at the office. He was calculating whether he could still salvage whatever was inside. I watched the realization hit him in real time. The account was flagged. Access was gone. Wonderful. He took a slow breath. This doesn't need to turn into a war. I stared at him. You forged my signature. He looked away. Not denial this time. Not excuse. Just avoidance. That silence told me more than a confession. Then he said, I was trying to fix things. I blinked once. Fix what? Everything. The answer was so pathetic, I almost felt embarrassed for him. Be specific. He dragged both hands over his face. I needed a place to keep things while I figured out the housing situation. For whom? He didn't answer. For Ava? Still nothing. Or for Lena HVAC? That got him. His head snapped toward me so fast it almost looked comic. There, the cleanest tell yet. He knew exactly what name I had said. Something inside me went still. Ava had been right. She was not the only one. Daniel saw that I had seen it and tried to recover immediately. I don't know what that means. Bad lie. His face hardened. I held his gaze. You are standing in a parking lot outside your secret storage unit, trying to explain a forged signature while pretending you don't recognize the name saved in your own phone. Pick a struggle. For a brief second, hatred flickered across his face. Not because I had wronged him, because I had forced him to see himself from the outside. And he hated the picture, whatever Ava told you. Didn't need much help from me, came a voice behind him. We both turned. Ava stood near the office door. Pregnant, pale, eyes swollen, arms folded across herself. I had not seen her arrive. Daniel looked like someone had hit him across the back of the head. Ava, no, she said. You do not get to start with my name like that. Interesting. Very interesting. She looked at me only briefly, then back at him. I followed you. He actually looked offended. The nerve of that man could have powered a city. You followed me? She laughed once, small and ugly. You told me to stay home and let you handle things. You keep saying that right before everything gets worse. Daniel glanced around, suddenly aware of the office windows, the workers, the camera above the door. His nightmare was complete. 2 women, public place, evidence, no script. This is not the place, he said. You're right, I said. Your mistake was making every place the place. Ava took a step closer, tears bright in her eyes now, but anger holding them in place. How many women? She asked. Daniel stared at her. She repeated it louder. How many? He rubbed his forehead. Ava, you're upset. That sentence was so stupid it almost deserved applause. Ava's face changed. Something soft in her finally died. I was pregnant and sleeping alone in an apartment you said you were paying for yourself, she said. And all this time you were stealing from your wife and forging her name? Every word landed. Every witness nearby heard enough. Daniel looked at me as if this was somehow my doing. I almost admired the consistency of his delusion. Then Ava said the one thing neither of us expected. She's not the only one you stole from. That got my attention. Daniel's too. What? I asked. Ava took a shaky breath. He asked me to take out a personal loan 2 months ago. Daniel snapped. Do not do this. She turned on him. You said it was temporary. I felt my pulse sharpen. Loan for what? I asked. Ava's eyes filled, but her voice held. He said he needed help bridging money for a property issue, and that once the divorce was done, he'd pay it back. He had me sign papers. I thought, she looked sick. I thought it was for us. Daniel looked ready to erupt, but this was better than rage. Rage is loud and brief. Exposure lasts. How much? I asked. Ava swallowed. 25,000. The number hung in the air. I stared at Daniel. He did not deny it. Not even then. Because the lie options were shrinking. Because once enough truth comes out in layers, denial starts sounding childish, even to the liar. I let out one slow breath. So now the picture widened. He had used our funds. Ava's credit. A hidden storage unit. A forged authorization. And some property arrangement he still had not fully explained. This was no longer just infidelity. This was a pattern. A fraud-shaped pattern held together by confidence and luck. And luck had just expired. My phone buzzed. Andrea. Perfect timing. I answered on speaker. Tell me you're somewhere private, she said. No, I said. Much better. I'm in the parking lot with Daniel and Ava. A pause. Then, dryly. Of course you are. I kept my eyes on Daniel as I spoke. I have the forged authorization, the account paperwork, a household card link, confirmation of the hidden unit, and a new statement that he induced her to take out a $25,000 personal loan. Andrea was silent for half a beat. Then her tone changed. Sharper. Colder. Do not say another substantive word to him without witnesses or written record. Daniel barked. Take me off, speaker. I ignored him. Andrea continued. Caroline, listen carefully. Based on what you've described, I want immediate preservation demands and formal notice by noon. If he touches shared accounts, moves assets, or destroys records after notice, it gets worse for him. I smiled slightly. Daniel saw it. Good. Also, Andrea said, if the signature is unauthorized on any housing-related instrument, I want copies now. Depending on use, this may move beyond divorce leverage. Daniel went completely still. There. That was the word he feared. Beyond. Not emotional escalation. Legal escalation. He finally spoke, but his voice had lost force. Caroline, please, please. That was new. Ava heard it too. So did I. And maybe in another life, on another day, that word could have meant something. Not now. Not after dinner. Not after the forged name. Not After the theft, I ended the call and slipped my phone back into my bag. Daniel looked at me like a man standing on a frozen lake that had just started cracking under both feet. "What do you want?" he asked again. That question almost made me tired. He still framed everything as desire, as if consequences existed because I wanted pain, not because he had earned it. What did I want? My name back, my money back, my peace back, my house free of him, my future unstained by his little side arrangements. But I did not explain any of that. I simply said, "I want you to stop thinking this is negotiable." He looked at Ava, then at me, then finally toward the row of units behind him. That row mattered to him too much. He was still worried about what was inside, which meant I should be too. "Mark!" I called toward the office. The manager appeared in the doorway. Daniel's face darkened instantly. "What are you doing?" I ignored him. "Can you confirm," I asked clearly, "that access to this account is suspended pending identity review?" Mark glanced at Daniel, then at me. "Yes, temporary hold is in place." "Excellent." Daniel shut his eyes. Only for a second, but enough. Whatever he needed from that unit, he was not getting it today. And now he knew. I knew it mattered. Ava saw that too. "What's in there, Daniel?" He said nothing. That silence was louder than any answer. I looked at him for a long moment, then said the sentence that broke the last piece of false dignity he still had left. "You built so many side lives, Daniel. You can't even keep track of which one is collapsing." Ava covered her mouth. Not because it was cruel, because it was true. Daniel looked at me with naked hatred now, pure, uncovered. Not because I had ruined him, because I had stopped helping him pretend he was decent. Then he did the smartest thing he had done all day. Nothing. He said nothing else. No shouting, no grabbing, no final speech. He got back into his SUV, slammed the door, and drove out of the lot too fast. Gone. Just like that. Ava stood there shaking. I looked at her. "This is where our paths separate." She lowered her hands slowly. "What happens now?" I adjusted my bag on my shoulder. Now he finds out what happens when the women he lied to stop protecting him. She stared at me. I added, "And you should start gathering your bank records, loan documents, and anything he had you sign." Ava's face tightened. "Do you think he used me too?" I gave her the only answer worth giving. "I think he used everyone." Then I turned and walked to my car. I had barely opened the door when my phone buzzed again. Andrea had sent a message. "Call me now." I reviewed the forwarded lease file. "There's something else." I froze, then opened the attachment she highlighted. Not the forged signature, not the guarantor section, the property address. I knew that address, not because I had been there, because I had seen it once before on a document Daniel snatched off the counter when I reached for it. My grip tightened on the phone. This was not just an apartment setup. This was property. And if Daniel had tried to use my information in connection with property paperwork, then the next chapter was not about kicking him out. It was about burying the version of himself he had spent years selling to the world. I got into the car, shut the door, and whispered to the empty seat beside me, "What exactly were you building?" Then I called Andrea back, because the house had only been the beginning. The storage unit was the middle, but the property tied to that forged paper. That was where Daniel had hidden the real betrayal. Andrea answered on the first ring. I was waiting. "What did you find?" "The address in the file is not just tied to a rental application," she said. "It appears in a property transaction record." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "What kind of property transaction?" "A small residential purchase in a neighboring county, not fully in his name." That made me go still. "What do you mean, not fully?" "I mean," Andrea said, "the record trail suggests he may have been trying to structure ownership through a third party while using your information as support." For 1 second, I said nothing. Third party. My information, property. Daniel had not just been cheating, not just moving money, Not just building apartments in secret. He had been trying to acquire property while dragging my name through the paperwork like a stolen key. I looked out through the windshield at the pale sky and felt something cold settle into place. This was the final shape of him. Not a confused husband, not a man who got lost, an opportunist, the kind who keeps taking because everyone around him keeps paying the cost. "Well?" Andrea asked. "I'm here." "Good, then listen carefully. I've got enough for emergency preservation demands, financial restraints, and a filing package that paints a very ugly picture. But if the property connection is what I think it is, I want full chain evidence." Meaning? Meaning find out who the third party is and what he thought he was building. Quietly, if possible. I almost laughed. Quietly. My whole life had apparently trained me for that. I'm on it. I ended the call and drove straight to the county records office. The building was plain and forgettable, like most places that hold life-changing information. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, plastic chairs, tired people holding folders with both hands. I took a number and sat down. While I waited, I thought about every version of Daniel I had ever known. Ambitious Daniel, charming Daniel, struggling Daniel, romantic Daniel, tired Daniel, defensive Daniel, angry Daniel. Now I saw the truth. He was not many men. He was one man wearing different jackets depending on the room. And I had spent years mistaking costume changes for complexity. When my number was called, I stepped up to the counter and asked for public records tied to the address Andrea sent me. The clerk typed, frowned, clicked again, then printed a summary. I looked down, and there it was. Property address, purchase date, ownership structure. My breath caught for one hard second. The owner was not Daniel. It was an LLC, and the registered member attached to the filing was a woman. Elena Mercer. Lena. Not HVAC. Not a fake label. A real woman. And based on the filing trail, not just another affair. Something more organized than that. I asked for the incorporation documents. A few minutes later, I had them. The LLC had been formed 4 months earlier. Its contact filing listed a mailing address I knew immediately. Not Ava's apartment. Not our house. The storage facility mailbox section. I stared at the page and felt my heartbeat slow instead of speed up. That was when anger turned into precision. Daniel had not been improvising. He had been building compartments. A pregnant mistress in one apartment. A storage unit for transition. Another woman tied to a shell property. My forged information used as support. He had not been leaving his marriage. He had been trying to multiply himself across several lives and fund all of them with lies. I photographed everything and sent it to Andrea. Her reply came back fast. "This is excellent. Come to my office. Now." So I did. Andrea's office sat on the 9th floor of a glass building downtown. All clean lines and quiet power. When I walked in, she was already standing beside the conference table, with printed copies spread out in front of her like she was preparing surgery. She did not waste time. "Sit." I sat. She slid one page toward me. "This is the overview as of now." I read, adultery, misuse of marital funds, hidden accounts, unauthorized signature, possible misrepresentation in property-related transactions, induced third-party debt, concealment of assets. I looked down at the page. It was beautiful. Not because it was dramatic, because it was clean. Everything Daniel tried to scatter across separate women, separate rooms, separate stories had finally been brought onto one table. Andrea pointed to the LLC filing. "If he used your information to support acquisition or tenancy tied to this structure, we can turn this from a messy divorce into a deeply unpleasant legal event." "I want deeply unpleasant." She gave me a tiny smile. I thought so. Then she handed me another document, a draft filing notice, a preservation demand, and a letter to Daniel's employer. I looked up sharply. His employer? Andrea nodded. Ordinarily, I prefer not to widen things unless necessary. But if there is misconduct touching professional representations, reimbursement structures, or falsified support documents, his employer may become relevant. Daniel worked for a regional development firm. Respectable title. Respectable profile. Respectable little speeches at networking dinners about integrity and community growth. Suddenly, the thought of that image meeting these papers felt almost holy. Andrea watched my face. I'm not saying we send everything now. I'm saying the option exists. I leaned back slowly. This was the moment. The point where revenge stops being pain returned and becomes decision. I could scorch everything at once. Or I could use the cliff edge to force surrender on terms that protected me best. What would you do? I asked. Andrea answered without hesitation. I would make him understand the size of the cliff before deciding whether to push. I nodded. Yes, not mercy, leverage. By early evening, everything was ready. Daniel received through counsel a formal package. Demand to vacate, notice of divorce filing, asset preservation warning, claim notice tied to unauthorized use of my information, and a demand for immediate disclosure of all hidden accounts, properties, related debts, and third-party arrangements. Andrea also included one line I appreciated deeply. Any destruction, concealment, or transfer of records after notice will be treated as intentional escalation. Intentional escalation. Elegant, clinical, almost polite. It was also a blade. An hour later, Daniel called. Not texted. Called. I stared at the screen, then answered. For 3 seconds, he said nothing. Then, you sent this to a lawyer? I stood in my kitchen looking out at the dark yard. Yes. His breathing was rough. This is insane. No, I said. This is documentation. You're trying to ruin my life. There it was again. That old male hymn. Consequences are cruelty. Exposure is betrayal. A woman refusing to die quietly is violence. I said nothing. He kept going, voice rising. A divorce is one thing, Caroline, but this property records fraud language, my job. What the hell is wrong with you? I smiled into the silence, because the question was upside down. What's wrong with me? I asked. You used my name. I was trying to solve problems. You were creating them. It wasn't supposed to go like this. That sentence hit me harder than he intended. Not because it hurt, because it revealed him completely. Of course, it wasn't supposed to go like this. He had a preferred version. One where I cried. One where I got confused. One where the women stayed separate. One where the papers stayed unread. One where he walked between lies like stepping stones. He had never planned for impact. You should have thought about that, I said quietly, before you served me humiliation in my own kitchen. He went silent again. Then he said, voice lower now, what do you want? The same tired question, the same belief that every conflict has a price. This time, I answered fully. I want the house. A breath caught on the other end. I want every hidden account disclosed. Silence. I want reimbursement traced. Another silence. I want your name off everything tied to me. His breathing changed. And I want you to understand that if one more lie appears, if one more document surfaces with my information on it, if one more asset moves, or if you try to hide behind any of those women again, I will stop being strategic and become exhaustive. He did not speak for several seconds. Then he said, almost faintly, you hate me. I looked around the kitchen I had reclaimed. The same counters, the same lights, the same table where he sat with her eating my food while imagining my collapse. Hate would have been easier, I said. This is clarity. Then I hung up. The next morning, everything cracked at once. Ava texted first. He emptied a drawer at the apartment last night and took documents. I photographed what was left. Sending now. 3 pictures came through. Loan forms, a jewelry receipt, and 1 page that made my stomach turn. A draft personal guarantee form with Daniel's notes in the margin. 3 sets of initials appeared beside possible occupancy routes. A, M, E, M, C, H. I stared at the page. Elena Mercer, Caroline Hayes, and A, M, another woman, another route, another life in progress. I sent the images to Andrea immediately. Her reply came back in under a minute. Good God! That was when even I laughed. Not from joy, from disbelief at the scale of his greed. Then came the second crack. Daniel's employer contacted Andrea's office requesting confirmation of representation after he missed a morning meeting and a compliance concern had been triggered by internal reimbursement irregularities. Of course it had. Men who lie this much almost never confine the habit to one room of their life. Andrea did not give them much. She did not need to. The existence of counsel was enough. The existence of documents was enough. The existence of panic was enough. By noon, Daniel sent one final request to meet in person. Andrea advised against it. I agreed in principle, then changed my mind. Not because I needed closure, because I wanted witness. I chose a private conference room at Andrea's office. Neutral ground. Recorded entry. No ambush. When Daniel walked in, I almost did not recognize him. Not because he looked ruined, because he looked uncomposed. No polish, no easy charm, no careful confidence. Just a man in an expensive coat that now looked like a costume worn too long. He sat across from me and Andrea and stared at the table. For once, he did not try to dominate the room. Good. Andrea began with formal points. Vacate confirmed. Asset freeze expectations. Document turnover. Non-contact boundaries regarding the property. Future communication through counsel. Daniel nodded at parts, barely listening. Finally, he looked at me. This is really it? I held his gaze. Yes, he swallowed. After everything? That question almost offended me. After everything. As though everything meant our years, our history, our loss. As though everything did not also include his affairs, theft, manipulations, unauthorized signatures, and public humiliation. No, Daniel, I said, because of everything. His shoulders dropped. Then he did something I had not expected. He cried, not dramatically, not loudly, just sudden, ugly tears he looked embarrassed to be having. 10 years earlier, that would have cracked me open. 10 years earlier, I would have rushed toward the vulnerable part of him and tried to save it from drowning inside the rest. But now I saw something different. Not repentance. Loss of access. Loss of control. Loss of image. Loss of the version of me who used to clean up after him. I didn't think you'd go this far, he whispered. Andrea kept her face expressionless. I let the silence answer first. Then I said, that was your mistake. He rubbed at his eyes hard and looked at me like he was searching for some older version to return. She didn't mean anything, he said suddenly. I stared at him. Then I laughed. Not kindly. You still don't understand the problem. He looked shattered. Caroline. No, I said. Which one didn't mean anything? The pregnant one? The property one? The possible third one hidden in your notes? Or the forged version of me you kept trying to drag into all of them? He shut his eyes. For once, shame found him. Not enough to redeem him, but enough to expose him. Andrea slid a pen across the table. Initial the acknowledgement of receipt. He looked at the pen for a long time. Then he signed. That sound, pen against paper, was one of the most satisfying sounds I had ever heard. Not because he was defeated, because he was finally documented. When the meeting ended, he stood slowly and looked at me one last time. I did love you, he said. That could have been the cruelest line of all if I'd still been weak enough to want it. Instead, I answered with the truth. You loved being forgiven. His face changed. Then he walked out. And that was the last time I saw him in person. The legal process took months, of course. Real revenge is slower than movies. There were disclosures, arguments, records, corrections, paper trails. More women than I ever wanted to know about. More debt than he had admitted. More weakness than I thought one man could contain. Ava moved in with her sister before the baby came. Elena disappeared the second formal notice touched the property structure. The mystery initials turned out to be another woman Daniel had been testing as a possible next arrangement. Daniel lost the house, lost leverage, lost access to several accounts. And after a quiet internal review, he lost his job. No headline, no public spectacle, no dramatic arrest, just something worse for a man like him. Respectability removed. And me? At first, I thought victory would feel louder. I thought there would be some cinematic rush, a final thrill, a dramatic release. That is not how it came. It came in smaller things. The first full night I slept alone in peace. The first morning I made coffee without dread in my stomach. The day I changed the locks and stood in the hallway listening to my own quiet house. The moment I opened that drawer again and found it holding only my papers, my name, my future. A few months later, I repainted the dining room. Not because I hated the old color, because I refused to keep eating inside his memory. I changed the chandelier too, sold the one we picked together and replaced it with something cleaner, sharper, brighter. A friend asked me once if I regretted how hard I went. I remember smiling and saying, no. I regret how long I confused survival with love. That was the real lesson. Not that men lie, not that affairs happen, not that marriages can rot quietly. I already knew all that by the end. The real lesson was simpler. Never let someone use your loyalty as a hiding place. The night Daniel brought his pregnant side chick home and said, she's moving in, he thought he was delivering the final humiliation. He thought dinner with a smile meant surrender. He thought the papers in my drawer were boring little things I handled so he would not have to. He thought my silence meant weakness. What he did not understand was this. A woman who has finally stopped begging to be chosen is a dangerous woman. Because once she is done trying to save the story, she becomes very good at ending it. And that night, while they sat at my table eating the food I served them with a smile, the truth was already waiting in the drawer. Not revenge, not rage, just consequences. Signed, filed, and eventually served back to him.